Good afternoon, and welcome to the UHY Construction Update for 2021. As what seems to be the new norm in 2020, we've gone virtual as well. So we have so much great information for you to share with you. We didn't want to stick you in front of a webcam for 3 hours straight. So we're going to actually do 3 one-hour sessions to break up the webinar to get you all this great information. During 2020, many industries were devastated by COVID-19. For example, movie theaters. Some have been able to make it through, and others actually thrived. I personally have a office and home furniture client that, while a pandemic is the last thing they wanted to see, their sales are actually going through the roof, selling office furniture for people's home offices. In the construction industry, it was really kind of a mixed bag. If you were able to be deemed an essential service, seems like you were able to really kind of not even really skip a beat and continue working. We saw that in a lot of our road builders because they were deemed essential services to keep the roads going. So really, it was a mixed bag, and we'll get into that a little bit later. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to be looking at 2020, kind of where we were, but also what's in store and what do we see for 2021. Before we get started, I wanted to talk a little bit about some administrative items. Our presentation today will be 60 minutes, and we're going to try and stay to that for everybody's time because we value your time immensely. So between our two presenters, they're going to be speaking between 30 and 45 minutes, and then that would leave 30 to 15 minutes for questions and answers. After the webinar series is concluded, each of our recordings will be posted on our website for you to go back and review. At the end of the presentation, a survey will be sent to you. Please fill that out. It's really important to us. We really value your feedback, and it helps to make our presentation better. If you asked that you needed CPE for this, today's presentation qualifies for 1 hour of specialized knowledge. So everyone in attendance is in mute mode, and that just helps better with background noise while we're doing our presentation. However, at the end of the session, we will be answering questions, as I mentioned before. So in the question box on the right side of your screen, you can submit questions that we will be addressing at the end of the presentation. And don't fear, if we run out of time, we're going to answer everyone's question, and we'll get back to you via email. So today we have two presenters, Kyle Camp and Dirk Elsperman. Kyle is going to be up first. Kyle's a partner at BuildCentral. Kyle works with contractors and service providers to understand the markets in which they operate. Kyle brings an innovative, infused business development approach to using technology and information to advance businesses. So I personally know Kyle, and he spoke at some of our construction updates in prior years. He has great content. He's a great presenter, and I know you're going to really enjoy him. So Kyle, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, John. And after that intro, everybody prepare to be disappointed. As that's a tall order. But hopefully, John, can you just confirm that you can see my slideshow? Yes,
looks great.
So thanks, and I appreciate the invite from UHY to join, and I'm really looking forward to learning from Dirk as well, and enjoy getting to know Dirk in this process. We're going to take a little bit of time and talk about when the fever breaks. It's a series of informational sessions we provided in many different flavors and contexts, but all around what happens post-pandemic, or maybe in the post-shock of the pandemic might be a better consideration. At BuildCentral, we provide a service to the construction and related industries utilizing electronic data captured information that's brought in on construction projects that are being planned or constructed across the United States. We bring that electronic information into our group of human research team that's based out of Chicago, where they specialize in project types across the whole commercial building spectrum and build out that database. Recently, we're excited to announce that we became a member of the BCI family. That's a business based in Australia, where we can provide information now across Australia, New Zealand, Southeast Asia, including our US operations. So what did we see in our research, and what did we learn as we spent time investigating and understanding what's happening in this COVID time in 2020? And I'm just going to run through a couple quick little slides here to kind of talk about some of the things that we feel like was brought forward in this. And the first thing is construction is identified as essential. This is just a map of kind of the different regulations and laws across the US and where they brought and how they defined construction during that time. Many of them had, many states obviously had times where they paused to understand the situation we're in, but more by and large, every state came back and defined it as an essential need for the general public and the welfare of the country. And it's a wonderful thing to think about from whether that's keeping the data world alive, whether that's bringing manufacturing capabilities upstream, bringing infrastructure together, medical refits, many different ways that we saw construction do that. And if you think about construction's strong focus on the safety of the individuals on sites, it put a perfect opportunity to be successful in that time frame. We saw arenas and convention centers. This is pretty strong and radical. The quick response as field hospitals became built into the convention centers, exposition centers. So here you see a picture of the Boston Convention Center and another of the Baltimore Convention Center. At BuildCentral, as we're reporting on the industry, in March and April of this year, times changed. People went home. They had to figure out how to work from home. And we looked for ways to help. And one of the things we did is actually started to track what we call COVID response categories. And we'll talk maybe a little briefly about those, but this would be one of them. What is construction doing and what's being done in a construction type manner to respond to COVID? And we provided this as a free service, bringing all these projects forward so that we could help our partners find ways to help and benefit the US. We saw conversions of hospitality facilities being brought into temporary quarantine medical facilities. We tracked over 140 projects, and I'm sure we don't have every single one of them where a hotel or some similar device was turned into a healthcare room or a quarantine facility. Here's just an example that the Army Corps of Engineers came out with kind of guidelines that didn't exist prior to this on how to turn your Fairfield Inn or your Hampton Inn into a medical facility, from what to install on the floor, how to bring in a capable ventilator capability or storage, right? And we saw this happen very, very quickly across the entire country. We saw adjustments and radical changes to in-flight medical projects. Here's just a couple examples of projects in our database that kind of represent that. So from Peconic Bay Medical Center, where they did an immediate renovation, and it was tied to bringing on ICU bed conversions. So it's probably not unreasonable to think that you would turn some facility around and adjust it, but to turn it into a pure ICU, it was pretty remarkable. You saw things like Westlake Hospital, which was mothballed and was scheduled to be destroyed, brought back online and reopened into a 230-bed hospital as the project rolled forward. So a lot of things where the construction industry really stood up and were strong, and all of this, those on the call that I get a chance to speak to today certainly have their own stories as well. So what was it? What does the COVID look like? And I looked for a lot of different places, kind of graph, just to give a brief example. And the most dramatic graph I could find is this unemployment. If you look here on the right-hand side, the growth of jobs across the country over the years, and then this basic cliff, maybe not ever seen before in the history, and how deep of a drop that was, and kind of where we're at today. To give you a little flavor, and I know that I'm going to be putting a lot of data in front of you today in a pretty quick manner. But with UHY's commitment to giving access to this presentation, hopefully you can come back and study some of the detail a little bit deeper. But on the left-hand side, you see where we're at as of September as the unemployment rates state by state across the country. Still dramatic recovery in place. And construction, though, if you look at some of the headlines from June, July, August, September, the word that kept coming back was stamina. The construction industry had the stamina to kind of work its way through this process a little bit differently than some other segments. So as we think about business development or what's going to happen in 21, there's really a tale of two sliding recoveries. Referencing this report done by McKinsey, you need revenue in an industry to drive surplus capital, and then that surplus capital drives investment. So investment being construction. And if you look at the different trends here in the graph, the white dot is if on these gray sliding bars, the white dot arts and entertainment in the second quarter of 2024, that's if the virus is fully contained. And the black is if it's a muted recovery. And the span of time and the uncertainty of when that would happen for the arts and entertainment recreation to recover back to the contribution level that they had in the GDP as of 2019. So if you go through that spectrum, you'll see things like manufacturing where it's a really a crapshoot right now where that comes back into. But one of the things you'll see is construction as a trade looking to maybe recover maybe early 21. Coming back out into 2022, at least in McKinsey's review. We'll talk a little bit about forecasts, and I'm going to dive more into our database to kind of explain details. But if you, one of the most widely tracked measures of construction activity is the census put in place, and that's what this graph is built off of. There's a gentleman named Ed Zarensky that I've come to appreciate his detailed version and detailed insights into forecasting. And this comes from his slide. And the big takeaway here is that as we enter 2021, the starting backlog for construction in process is 10% lower than what it was as we entered 2020. So that hasn't happened. That type of decrease has not happened since 2011. And we would expect, except for residential, about 80% of annual spending comes from a starting backlog. So quite a significant place to start from and the hole that we have to dig in 2021. So this recovery, you'll see the red line is January 20, the black line is August, I believe, of this year, and the top line being residential, the quick drop. Now, most recessions, which we are in, if you look back over the series of recessions, 80, 100 years, there's normally a pattern that shows up where the recovery builds back. The first is that residential construction will come back very quickly or the quickest. That's followed by the commercial, and then lastly, by the infrastructure or non-building categories. And here you see that dramatic drop in residential building, but quickly is almost built back to the point of where it was at the beginning of 2020. And you'll see kind of a recovery coming back pretty quickly. What's being forecast here is that non-residential buildings are going to continue to slump for many reasons. And non-building infrastructure really didn't take that hit. You know, as John mentioned, a lot of road manufacturer, road construction groups, and those that like that really kind of just powered right through the program, and we would expect to see that. The other note here is that we are anticipating that the federal government, when Congress can act, and the second kind of stimulus package is going to include a heavy dose of infrastructure spending, and is encouraging for that piece going forward. Now we're going to kind of go a little bit data geek on you. It's going to take a little bit to explain this slide, but hopefully it's going to give you some indication. So in the thousands of projects that we're tracking in our database, we group them into these building types that you'll see in the left-hand column. So, and then I looked at the data compared to 2019 compared to 2020. So the first column where it says average monthly 2020 to 2019 projects, this is the rate at which new projects were entering our database in the planning or construction phase. So compared to the average monthly influx of projects in 2019, this rate is at 2020. So as an example, athletic facilities, we're inputting in 2020 new projects at a rate that's only 71% of what we were doing in 2019. So if you read that column on down, you'll see the categories that kind of stand out. highlighted most of them in black. The category that's always been kind of very strong recently and did not slow down, if anything, it picked up pace a little bit during this process, is data centers. That continues to grow and be a very significant segment, emerging segment out of the construction and the building types that are being built. You'll see office buildings is kind of one of the perplexing ones. Many facilities in our database will include office space. So a project could be kind of be multiple projects at the same time. So it could be a medical facility with office complex attached to it. But we saw office buildings be kind of beat up and trashed over the last several years. And just like the area in Michigan that I live, sometimes economic doesn't really affect it if it's already been depressed or suppressed for a while. And so that's what we are anticipating and seeing in this office building structure. So if we go on to the second column, we're looking here now at total year-to-date projects in 2020 compared to 2019. So as a spectrum, we're looking at the entire year of 2019 and then projects year-to-date in 2020. And again, these categories, as you look at that kind of whole holistic sum up of projects, you'll see that 81% is the rate that we're entering new projects this year compared to last. So down about 19% in new planning projects coming into the database. This is based off of value. So you'll see the segments of the construction industry that are outperforming their peers, again, continues to be anything above 81% in that second column is performing better relatively percentage-wise to the other categories. So manufacturing, industrial, warehouse, data centers, office buildings, multifamily, retail, even at this level, coming on board. And a lot of that might be due to the kind of the resurgence and things in place as retail was already putting a reactionary together before the pandemic hit. Then we tried to sort that through. So we've kind of went through since I would say February till November, so 9 months of this pandemic in the US, people trying to grapple and understand that. So if we just look at the last 6 months, which would be like April till October, and then the previous 6 months, that's the comparative rate now this year that the projects are entering. Again, down about 6%, but surely a recovery from the 81% as a year-to-year exposure. One of the really interesting things to see is this manufacturing industrial warehouse space. One of the weaknesses I think exposed and will be affecting construction going forward is this need to have a resilient manufacturing capability in the US to handle situations like this. Lastly, on this these are all new buildings, looking at just August through October, so really the last 90 days compared to that same 90-day period in 2019. And data centers, again, 125% rate. That need, everybody's working from home, we're all on Zoom meetings or the like, it's driving that need for data. You're also seeing more and more entities and companies deciding to go virtual in their primary business course. It's driving that need for data and information. Office buildings, again, staying pretty strong, and we're about 80% this period of time in 2020 compared to 2019. The blue table here starts to look at renovations and basically is exactly the same format of the structure of the table. And I'll just draw some kind of conclusions and some summaries here as we look at some of the categories. So casinos, what we saw in hospitality space, anywhere that the casinos are gathering of people, when they went empty, projects that maybe were in planning for renovations got pulled forward quicker. They took the cash that was available. They realized the impact to their constituents. Maybe they were closed, maybe they were very limited, and they executed against those renovations at a quicker pace than normal. And you actually saw that pick up and continues to pick up in areas like casinos. Data centers still rocking and rolling. So the need for data or data management or these facilities came so quick that the quickest way to apply to meet that need was to expand existing facilities. And so they were quickly done here in the renovation side on data. Office buildings, very similar. Any office developer you talk to right now or anybody managing office space, they understand they're going to be heading into a very competitive environment when we get through the fever breaks. And a lot of these renovations are being built into these office buildings to put them in a better position competitively across the segment. The other item here I'll just draw attention to is this multifamily. I think we're going to continue to see that as a very specific category. It's going to spread away from the inner cities or the urban areas and out to the suburban areas. As an example, one of the mega trends I've been following for a long time is the millennials' lack of desire to buy in the suburban areas or buy a single family home. And this is the exact type of event that's going to cause them to do that. And we're seeing it in droves. In Bloomberg, and they just mentioned that housing prices in New Jersey are skyrocketing because everybody's leaving the metroplex of New York, where you can take a $3 million apartment in New York and turn it into a $3 million home in New Jersey and quadruple your space. And anybody who's been quarantined in their facility or in their home or locked in their home for 3 months, they're looking for more space. So we're seeing that as a significant trend heading out into 2021. A couple of just graphical representations here, a very simple way to look at it, but we're comparing the starts of construction. So this is break ground construction dollars that started in 2020 versus that of 2019. A very simple graph. The states that are in green are growth. They actually had more starts in 2020 than 2019. Yellow, primarily flat, and the red would be a retraction where there's been less starts compared to 2019 across all of the commercial and building types that we report on. A little bit of flux here. I did, flat is 95 to 105%. So, basically break even, growth being a little bit greater than 105% of the 2019 starts. But this gives you an idea kind of how this geographic spread of how 2020 has reacted. Now, as you can imagine, a start is kind of it's already been in process. Many of those projects, February, March, April, June, July, were going forward, and we didn't see an overwhelming, like maybe you would have thought, projects just stopped. If they were that close to starting, they continued forward. This last chart here of the United States, a little bit more complex, but if you think about where I'm going to go find work or where am I going to find the next projects, we took all of the projects that started in the last 4 years, so 2017 through 2020, and we put that all together and developed an average dollars of projects that start a year. We did it by cities and states. So these states, we developed an average start dollar, and then we looked at all of the project value that we have in planning that we can document our active projects being considered, planned, or prepared for in those states. And the reds have 1.7 to 3 years of average starts in their planning database. So the pipeline says that if every one of those projects went forward, they could fill 3 average years of start. The yellow is somewhere in the middle. We need at least in our database at least 3 years to maintain where you're at by geography normally. And then the greens, those would be states that have 4+ years, up to 7, I think 7 years, a little over was the highest state that had the most dollars in planning compared to an average start year. So if you're looking at geographical expansion or looking at focuses, these states would show in the data set, the green states would be the ones that have the most potential to go forward. Building on that same concept, and just to give it a little exposure into the data set a little bit deeper, we took that into the cities. So here on the top graph, so this section is kind of built into two with the headers. These are cities. So you see the city of San Luis Obispo, I just slaughtered that, but Oceanside, that would have been an easier one. Oceanside, California. In our data set, we have an average of 7 years of planning projects in total number. So the total number of projects per year on average, we have 7 years of that in our planning data right now for Oceanside, California. So these are the cities, individual cities. We processed through about 16,000 cities in the US and identified these as the top based on the number of projects that they have in planning compared to an average year. The bottom section, what I thought this highlighted was when we look at it by the dollars of construction and planning. So these cities have the most dollar or average years of construction starts in planning right now, with Brownsville, Texas being at the top. 25 years of value of an average year for Brownsville is in our planning database. What that exposes is that it has that much value, but only about a year worth of number of projects. So it starts to identify where there's very significant projects in a city, and it might not be the specific city you want to expand to because the volume of projects is not as robust. So just a couple quick dives. Appreciate the opportunity to kind of dive deep into that. And I thought I would just share, our reporters based in Chicago are talking to the industry all day long, every day, and we keep a running log in our business of kind of trends that we're seeing and picking up from people. And these are ones that I think our group has pulled together that might have, but sparked by COVID, they're going to have long-lasting effects out into the construction space as we go into 21 and beyond. One of the things that's really kind of picking up is this development of contracts between facilities, contractors, and government agencies for yet to be determined projects. So we read records of cities licensing the whole hotel to put in a quarantine facility to kind of supplement. And there's talks and discussions going on about these locations identifying with contractors and actually putting together programs in place for just what if scenarios out into the future, which is pretty unique. We're seeing medical space projects that were in final stages of planning are going back to the drawing board, and they're being pulled in to look at what they can do to make it more resilient and more adjustable, the space. So if they need to adjust for surge capacities or different things that they learned during the pandemic, how can they design that in before they start construction? We're seeing a strong push, a very strong push in the medical build outs to move to ambulatory surgical care centers, move some of those operations off-site from the strong tower of the hospital. One of the biggest impacts to the medical and kind of the paradox was, the medical facilities were being overtaxed in their treatment of COVID, and at the same time, there were many people involved with that medical facility that didn't have work because they had to shut down all of the more normal surgical situations or other visits. So a strong push for these medical healthcare systems and others to move some of that stuff off-site into separate facilities that wouldn't have to be shut down during a continued or another similar experience. The spread of single family as well as multifamily out into the suburbans is, we kind of talked about that. Office space, it's a crapshoot right now. The open concept that really lived in the office space is being kind of challenged a little bit here in this situation. And really, many firms, John talked about being at home, many firms are reviewing whether or not they're going to even release that space, if there's a need to put together an office, or did we learn enough that we can do a certain amount virtual here, that office space is going to be really taxed going forward. And then lastly, this exposure of the resilience in our manufacturing stream, especially pharmaceutical, where when we needed things the most, our supply chain, being a global supply chain, had some kinks in it. And so the move here to move to manufacturing to the US, or bring it back to the US, or build out facilities that would help us in another medical emergency or similar, was exposed. And there's a lot of traction moving forward to kind of boost that going forward. So thanks for the opportunity to share the information, and pass it back to you, John.
Great, thanks. Now I'd like to pass it on to Susan Orr. She's a partner in our St. Louis office, and she's going to introduce Dirk.
Great, thanks, John. I've been fortunate to know Dirk and his family for about 25 years. So it is my pleasure and honor to introduce Dirk Elsperman. Dirk's impressive bio is lengthy, so I will stick to the highlights. Dirk is an owner and chief operating officer of Tarlton Corporation, a reputable general contractor headquartered in St. Louis, Missouri. The company was formed in 1946 and is in its third generation of leadership. Tarlton is a top 400 contractor, employs more than 350 people, and excels in complex new construction and renovation. We asked Dirk to share his insights today, not only because he has 30 years experience in the industry, but also because he has a history of service in local and national capacities for the Association of General Contractors. In addition to serving as chairman of the board for AGC of Missouri, he has been a contributing member on 10 committees of AGC of America and is certified in its advanced management program. In April 2019, Dirk began his year serving as president of AGC of America and wrapped up his year just as the pandemic began in March of 2020. So Dirk, we look forward to hearing your thoughts about what is going on in the market and industry from a business owner's perspective and what you've seen throughout the country. With that, I will turn it over to you.
Well, great, Susan. Got my slides up. We're looking ready to go.
Yep.
Yes. No. Okay. Perfect. As Susan mentioned, we've known each other for 25 years, and this is the unsolicited plug that I'm giving to UHY because, as I was telling the group before, we had been with a different firm for a long time, but always had different partners on our team every year, and finally we just said, boy, we got to have some consistency. So we went to the market and joined up with UHY, and for the last 20 years or 25 plus years, Susan has been on our account, starting as a new junior auditor, and now as the partner in charge, and it's been a fantastic relationship. And she also talked a lot about my experience with AGC, both on a local level and a national level. And I will admit that I have drunk the association Kool-Aid. So if some of my comments are tilted in that direction, it's because I'm a big believer in the fact that we can do a lot of positive things for our industry when we band together with like-minded people, and I've really gotten a lot out of my experience, and I do highly recommend involvement, if it's AGC or a different association, just to kind of advance your own.
I lost Dirk's audio. Is everybody else?
Dirk, please unmute yourself. You're self-muted.
Oh my goodness!
There you go.
Party foul.
You're back.
Yeah. For those of you drinking along at home, if you're playing that virtual meeting drinking game, I had the first party foul there. So, so as I was moving around through the country, talking to folks, pre-pandemic, workforce was the #1 issue. Everybody wanted to know what's going on, how can we address this issue, and I have to say that it is still the #1 issue 8 months later. We are in a situation that this is really a national issue, but the solutions are always local, because what's different what works on workforce development and retention and in St. Louis might not be the exact same thing that happens down in Texas or in Detroit or wherever you're from. There are some common issues that we've got that we continue to work through. This was a hangover from the last downturn, although it's been generations in the making. Quite frankly, in the downturn of 2008, 9, 10, we had a lot of folks that you kept on to your A players, and we lost a lot of the B players on our teams. Folks that had great work ethics, were very capable, but they just weren't in the right position in your company to maintain a full-time job. So they left the industry and went to other industries that were still hiring at the time, and quite frankly, we haven't had a chance to pull them back in, even though we had an incredibly strong recovery. That in and of itself made a big difference in the number of people that were available. And then we have the demographic reality of our birth rates are declining. And construction is not the only industry that is working hard towards recruiting folks in there. Even though we're, quote, in a downturn, maybe a recovery, I can't tell you how many different places are looking to hire. And it's the accountants, it's the airline pilots association, it's every sector is constrained by finding good quality people. And construction's probably really struggled the most with some social headwinds and the image of construction. And folks turned away a generation ago or so from the vocational technical, we're calling it career and technical education now, CTE, and towards the four-year college is the way to go. And I'm really proud to say that there's a lot of different programs in place around the country where people are working to change those social headwinds and promote the image of construction. As I'll share in a minute. And then we've also struggled with the lack of a comprehensive immigration plan. I won't go into that too far, other than in St. Louis, immigration isn't as big a deal for the construction industry, but I sure know that all the we'll call them the smile states, the Suncoast states, wherever immigration is important to filling jobs, without a plan in place, we really struggle. We don't, in construction, we're working hard towards making construction skills on a par with medical skills, because they are specialized skills to allow for a different level of visa programs. We've been on AGC. We've been working on our workforce for a dozen years, and I'm just going to click over to one of our websites that we've got that we've been building, and just scroll through it, workforce.agc.org, and you can find all of our resources. You've got contact people if you want to know what folks are doing on educational or media or advocacy issues. They're all there, and this is open to the public, so you can jump in there. And then finally, on workforce, I think one of the biggest issues that we started working on long before things went went viral across the country was our diversity and inclusion efforts. And I have a whole speech on what's great about construction. And I can tell you a million things that I love about it and what draws me in. And because there's such awesome things about construction, I think we need to include everybody in the opportunities that construction provides. And by virtue of the fact that we have these great opportunities and we're trying to recruit people, we also have to get folks, once we get them in, we have to make sure that we are caring for them appropriately and that they feel welcome, and so that they stay in construction for a long time. So in March, we launched our BuildCulture.org, or our Culture of Care program. And again, this is another website that's open to anybody who chooses to attend, and you can make your commitment to providing a culture of care. You can see that firms that are spending a lot of time and embracing diversity and inclusion are typically more successful, and we've got a business case that points that out. And you can take a pledge and become a member with a whole bunch of other folks across the industry that are of like minds and working towards making construction as inclusive as possible. I'm going to switch gears now. One of the things that's been so important to everybody has been the COVID-19, and Kyle did a great job on that, walking through some of the issues, and I'm going to try to take it to a little more personal level. If you ever questioned why construction is essential, um, the picture in the background was a project meeting that on a project that we did. It was one of those conversions of a Quality Inn into 120 bed hospital in 72 hours. And from a company standpoint, it couldn't have come at a better time. My dad actually passed away from COVID-19, and literally the day that he died, after I sat down at my desk to kind of collect my thoughts, my phone rang, and it was the Corps of Engineers, and said, "Okay, we're ready to go. When can you get your folks here?" So that was on a Tuesday. We met with them Tuesday afternoon at 5:30. We got all our ducks in a row on Wednesday and hit the ground running on Thursday. And this is why we couldn't let construction become a non-essential industry, because we can't address the needs of our industry and of our country and of our national security without keeping our industry intact. As a company, one of the things that we really had to get first and foremost are our safety protocols, because we couldn't remain as an essential industry if we couldn't protect our people. The bottom line on any project is that everybody's going home in the same condition that they came to work, and so addressing those safety protocols took some challenges, and we kept on working on that, and there were great resources. Proud of the whole industry, the way that I'm talking to my competitors. What are you guys doing? They're questioning us, trying to make sure that we're keeping our folks safe as we're going through. I think right after it was, what do we need to do to protect our people if we can keep this running, was the legal questions. Okay, what do we have to do about force majeure? Is COVID a force majeure type of situation? And what is this going to lead to impacts on our projects? And I think from a Tarleton standpoint, we were really lucky that the projects that we had in place, they had a few issues along the way, but nothing that would fall into that force majeure category. Other folks had some really hard times dealing with that, and I think moving forward, you're not going to be able to claim COVID-19 as a force majeure event just because now it's a known entity, and it's something that we've got to prepare for. Whether it's through the proper PPE or staging of personnel and equipment and materials, these are things that we now know and have had to adjust to. As a contractor, our backlog, Tarleton ended up doing about 25% less than our initial plan. We primarily do building types of projects. And so the healthcare types of projects that we work on were the ones that took it in the shorts the most. We had a couple of projects that were canceled on the healthcare side, as Kyle said. They weren't doing elective surgeries, so they put the brakes on any kind of support work that were happening to support that. We had a couple of projects that's decelerated. And then I know a lot of my friends in the highway and transportation world, because traffic was a lot less, saw their projects accelerated, and that was a real boom for the highway transportation folks. They're a little worried about what comes in the future because state revenues are down, all municipal revenues are down, and we're not sure if we're going to get a transportation bill coming on. And then lastly, on COVID-19, we had the CARES Act, which was something that we had to deal with on extending some benefits to our employees. Spent a lot of time working on that. And then the Paycheck Protection Program, which I'll leave it to the accountants to explain Going into it as a company, we took advantage of it, but knowing that it was probably coming 6 weeks ahead of schedule for us. It was there were 6 months. I'm sorry. We had our backlogs that were carrying us right after that. The bigger challenge is now where those brakes that were put on in March, April, and May are starting to hit us now, and we've got to adjust to the next 6 months. I think is when we're going to need those funds. Of course, everybody was spending a whole lot of time on the election outcomes, and I am not a pollster. I'm not a political person. Really just tried to study what this was going to do to a company like ours. I think that we will see an investment in infrastructure. Both parties were interested in this. I was at a meeting, let's see, I guess it was May of 2019, where Nancy Pelosi met with the big contractor, transportation contractor coalition, and swore that this was something that all parties are involved in, and we are going to get a bill done with the White House. The next day was that infamous meeting where all the leaders of Congress met with the Trump administration, and it took them longer to get through security at the White House than they actually met because they couldn't talk infrastructure without talking about indictment, and the whole deal was gone. So I think we'll see something next year on transportation. I'm not sure what it'll be, but that's a big driver in our industry. The big concern that AGC has is the Green New Deal, which sometimes I look at that and think that maybe it's good for construction. Other times I'm thinking, oh boy, this can just add too much cost to construction and it'll slow things down. My concern is out there, not yet determined. But that could get added on to a highway authorization or some other must-pass legislation, and we could see some issues there. These other concerns are ones that I think everybody feels with, and the one I will share is the PRO Act. Do a little research on this. It is a bill that passed the House, and it is organized labor initiated, and there are items in it that if you're a union contractor like us would make you nervous, and if you're a non-union contractor it would make you nervous. I think doing your homework on that one is going to be really important. And then finally, looking forward, where do we go from here? I've looked at what our company was able to do and so many other companies, which really was, the word of the day is pivot. And it wasn't, it was an absolute pivot. I got back from the AGC convention on March 12th. We shut our office down on March 16th. And we were able to do that. We had the technical infrastructure in place, and we've managed to continue our operations in a remote format and at a very high level. And the change that's gone on with it. Now, I've heard one speaker yesterday, as a matter of fact, say that the pandemic hasn't created change. It only accelerated change that was already in motion. And I would agree with that. But we've been going at such a hard pace, adapting to what's going on. I liken it to kind of a strategy if you ever do any racing, whether it's triathlons or swimming or running or cycling or whatever, is that if you want to catch that competitor in front of you, you don't sprint after them, you just gradually increase your pace. And whatever we define as our competitor in front of us the last 5, 6, 7 months, we've been sprinting to catch it. and at some point we're going to have to take a breath. But we've done so well on our resiliency that we need to continue to change to somehow maintain that pace. As a company, we're running at about 25% occupancy, and folks have gotten used to working out of their own homes, and I'm thinking the reentry is going to be a big issue. And as a company, you have the juxtaposition of people in the office versus people on the job sites on the front lines, and managing those dynamics are something that we'll continue to pay attention to. I'm looking forward to even more inclusive conversations. While the unrest was going on in the summer, I had friends of mine, peers, colleagues around the country thinking that our country was just getting ripped apart at the seams. And my feeling was, hey, I'm having better, in-depth, more eye-opening conversations now than I ever have had. And therefore, I think looking forward, we're just going to have more and more of the same, and we're going to be able to bring this wonderful world of construction to more people. And from an economy standpoint and where we go, I have to say that Tarleton has entered 2021 fiscal year 21 with our best backlog we've had in a long time, and it even carries over in 2022. Now there are some big ifs on that. If we see a double dip in the downturn, we'll really be struggling. So we continue to watch the housing starts and ABI. Workforce development is going to continue, and then one of the things that I mentioned on workforce is wherever I can go, I want to talk to mental health issues that are in construction. And I know we're going to run out of time, but if you have any questions on mental health issues and you're not addressing them with your company, this is my contact information. I'm happy to share with you all whatever we're doing, because at the end of the day, it's one thing to get everybody in, but once we get them into construction, we want to keep them. So thanks, and now I will turn it over to John.
Thanks, Dirk. And Dirk, my sincerest condolences about your father. The COVID has touched so many people in so many ways. It's just a terrible situation that we're in. But I just heard today one of the other companies is getting close on a vaccine, and hopefully that comes sooner than later. Hopefully, there's no politics in this vaccine. Yeah. I mean, this is really a personal issue, and people should not be bringing politics in it. But thanks again. Yeah, and thanks for your presentation. It was great. So now we do have a few minutes left for some questions. If you have out there, feel free to submit those through the question box. And we'll see if we can, everybody wants to come back on. Kyle, turn on your webcam and then we can address that. Let's see. I have a question for, let me bring this up. Give me 1 second, please. A question for Dirk. How has your organization and others navigated the unpredictability of this market? Do you think companies have reacted quickly enough to the downturn, or they've missed the mark?
That's a really good question, and very broad. How have we reacted to the downturn? I think a lot of companies really tried to pay attention to what they did back in 2008, 9, and 10. If you took advantage of the PPP, that you had some restrictions on cutting overhead, meaning people, for a while after you were successful on your loans. I know that some firms cut before they got the PPP. I know that we had to cut back a little bit on our overhead, and I think that fortunate thing is that I think a lot of companies reacted pretty darn quickly. There are some, as I said, there's a lot of opportunities still out there. It's just everybody's kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. There's a little bit of reluctance to make a major investment because we just don't know exactly. This downturn's very different from the last one, and how it happened so quickly, and in spite of that, housing's still going gangbusters. So we'll see how it goes. But I think most people jumped on it right away.
Great. We have another question for Kyle. Do you see any specific geos in the U.S. as having higher or lower risk for new construction starts, and why? Any specific subfactions of the construction industry really forecasted to struggle in the upcoming year? And I think you might, are you muted?
Looks like I'm gonna be having a drink with Dirk. That was a party foul.
There we go.
So
turn mine off just so I can have a drink with you guys.
The segment that we are closest to, that we think that has the most struggle and the longest road to recovery is going to be the hospitality section. It's just going to take so long to get that rolling, and we're talking to large hospitality developers on a pretty regular basis, and it's quite a bit out into the future. That and anything related to travel, it's going to take some time to kind of reprime the pump to get it going. Geography-wise, we're seeing things tied primarily to the housing locations, as well as to just the overall population manipulation. I saw a graph one time where the census will actually go out and in the United States will drive a stake at the central location of the population, right? And it started out, as you can imagine, in Massachusetts, and it's worked its way west and continually since that very time. And now it's somewhere in Iowa, and it's going to continue to dive south. And so that's going to drive the quickest recovery. I think the last thing I would say to that that's coming out into the future is it's going to be very that kind of start, stop, speed up that Dirk was talking about. It's all driven around the epicenters of the industries. So where the industry is going to recover, be fast, the areas around that are going to be strong. And I think we're going to see that a little bit of spurt and spot as we come back out of this, tied to where the manufacturing or the industries that can recover the fastest, those geographies where that's centered, is going to be the strongest.
Great. We have one more question, and I'm not quite sure who wants to field this. What do you see, what do you forecast for Q3 of 2021 and forward in the construction market? I think they're looking out almost a whole year here to the Q3 of 2021. It's pretty far out. Anybody want to try and field that?
I can. As I said before, we had a strong backlog coming into fiscal. We're September 30th company, so that'll be the end of our fiscal 2021. Will be then. We'll certainly know where that office market's going to be. I don't know exactly. We're completing a very large project for a tech company in St. Louis. They're going to take 250,000 square feet, but they're not planning on filling it. We were supposed to be done at the end of this year, but they're not planning on filling it until June. So seeing what's going to happen in that office market is going to be a big deal. On the plus side, I do think that there will be something going on from an infrastructure standpoint. Hopefully, we'll have something in play in the first 100 days of the Biden administration. Every administration wants to make a big splash in the first 100 days.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank my speakers today. I think you guys did a great job. We're right at the 2 o'clock mark here, so I promised that we'd be done in an hour. So real quick, part two session is Tuesday, November 17th at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will have 2 speakers, one from the banking industry and one from the surety industry. Obviously, your line of credit and your bonding is critical in the construction market. We're going to get their insights. And then part 3 is going to be Friday, November 20th at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we're going to talk some attest, financial statement type of items, and tax items, which hopefully we'll get a better insight into that as it gets closer. Once we know, is there who our president is, who's controlling the Senate, who's controlling the House, all those things come into play when you talk about tax. So if you haven't signed up and you want to sign up for one of the next 2 sessions, please go to uhy-us.com, then click on Insights, Events, and the Construction Update. And there you can register for part 2 or part 3 or both. So again, I wanted to thank Kyle and Dirk for their time today, for speaking to us. And if anybody in the audience has any questions, please reach out. You can reach out to Susan or our partner that works out of our St. Louis office, or myself, John Gallo, and I work out of the Metro Detroit area. So again, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to Tuesday's session.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.